David Toller here with Supplemental Sound, and today I want to talk about the 6 elements of a successful live stream in our small churches. That's what we're all about, is small church sound solutions. But we've got to make sure we have all these elements in order to do a successful live stream, and then we'll talk about, like I'm doing here, is a pre-recorded video. If I didn't have access to the internet, and you say I'm in a isolated area, I'll be sure to tell you about that too. But here's the things you're going to need. Number one, a computer. You're going to need a video, how you're going to capture your service and so forth. Third is lighting. We don't think a whole lot about that. Internet, obvious, right? We'll talk about it more in detail. Software, and the most important element, my favorite, is the audio portion. So let's go through it. Number one, you're definitely going to need a computer. And the one you have may be sufficient, it may not, depending on the year. I mean, a PC or a Mac, of course, this goes along with budget. A lot of times helps us determine that, and depending on whether you're a PC or a Mac person. So I've used both, I have both. We do stream, more of my setups have been PCs, which is completely fine. Make sure they have these 3 items just right off the top. I can go in a lot of detail, but this is the main thing to think about, is make sure you have enough RAM. So you go with at least 8 gigabytes of RAM. I'd say it's a minimum, but if I could swing it and spend a little bit more, because things are constantly changing all the time and this will soon be outdated itself, but I would try to go with 16 gigabytes of RAM or 32. Of course, you go higher than that if you can afford it. But I understand if you're on a budget, so at least get the 8. I've done plenty of streaming with 8 gigabytes of RAM, no issues. But of course, if I could swing it in future reference, I'd get 16 to 32 gigabytes of RAM. Again, with the processor, that's going to be the most important. And I'd say at least an i5 processor or higher, of course. Now, this would be the minimum. Don't go any lower than an i5 processor. I've done a lot of live streaming and have churches I've installed systems they're doing the i5 and no issues whatsoever. But it wouldn't hurt if you could swing it. i7, i9 would be good as well, okay? And then make sure it has a GPU, which is a graphics card in there as well. I'm not a guru on that. You can kind of look that up and Google it and find out. But so you can look in the gaming computer type realm, and most time you'll be fine there. All right, secondly is video. I've used all different types. I mean, if you really wanted to go real budget, I mean, you could use a webcam. It's probably gonna look terrible, and you're gonna have to get it real close. I mean, it could be done, but I don't want to go that low. But I've used GoPros. Bringing them into the computer. Thing with the GoPro is it gets pretty warm. That's better for my pre-recorded video, in my opinion. We use a lot of camcorders. Had a lot of good success out of camcorders out there. They're in the $250, $300 range, and you can see the description below for some recommendations. So camcorder does good. Not going to do good in such low lights. If you have some low light issues, you might want to consider that. Like it's give and take, right, because of the budget. The next step up would be a DSLR camera, which I'm actually recording this video with, is a Canon SL3. And even though this is kind of archaic, me using a chalkboard, really I'm using a lot of the elements here, except for, of course, the software and the things like that, just to do this pre-recorded video. So I'm using a DSLR camera. It should be like a photography camera, for those of you that may not be familiar, or a mirrorless camera. Okay, DSLR camera, I'm saying going to start around, $500 plus. All right, I mean, you can go on up, depends on what kind of lenses you get and so forth. Mirrorless cameras, I've installed a mirrorless, which has a smaller body than the DSLR camera. And, you can use the some options there on the mirrorless side, which would be a Panasonic G7 is what I was trying to think about. And some others that would be a good option. That run you about $500. Alrighty. give or take. And then the next option would be a PTZ, which stands for pan, tilt, zoom. This is my favorite option here because it's out of sight, out of mind. It's not a distraction, because that's one of the things about these different cameras. Somebody's going to have to set them up, put them on a tripod. You've got your wires everywhere. You know, people are going to come by. They're going to see it. It's going to be a distraction. It's going to make people nervous. So that's the reason if you can make the investment at PTZ, mount it on a ceiling mount if you have a low ceiling, or either you can put it on the sidewalls or on the back. I've installed a lot of systems where we put it right as you go in the sanctuary, right above where the clock most time is, and and the PTZ is back there. It's out of sight, out of mind, and soon people forget it's there, which that's a benefit in itself. It's not a distraction. Now, again, we pay for convenience, right, and what we can afford. But then this would be a good investment if you look to get real serious about it. I do realize they start, you know, $1,800 for the ones that I use. So again, like I said, that may scare you. Next is lighting. Things we don't really think about. Diffuse, soft lighting. All right, what I'm recording this video with, I've turned off the lights in the room. And what I'm doing is I've got two what we call soft boxes. There's one here and one here. And that gives a soft, diffuse light. All right. So even though you say, well, this is archaic, you're writing on a chalkboard, still I've got the two soft boxes. I'm not trying to say you need to get soft boxes for your church. What I'm saying is we don't think about the lighting portion of it. When it goes to our cameras, are they good and low light before you invest? If you got a real dark sanctuary, you're going to have to think about lighting, because any camera is going to look terrible without proper lighting. Spend $1,800, if you don't have good lighting, it's not going to look good. That's just the way it goes. Lighting makes the shot. Most time we just use ambient light, which is good old sunlight the good Lord gives us through the stained glass windows, if you have those, or the windows coming in, of course, on night services, so you don't have the ambient light and it changes, cloud cover. You may not have to consider this in much, but it is something I want to mention. Next is internet, obviously. Go with a good business class internet. I mean, not that stuff you have at your house, which can be good. Make sure it's, you have a direct Ethernet connection. All right, run a dedicated hard line to your sound booth. In fact, do me a favor. Install that. Probably more than likely, most of your activities with the internet, your router probably should be placed in the sound room. Because if not, then we're going to have to run lines and so forth. If you need help with this, I'll be glad to help you run Ethernet lines. I've done plenty of it, put the connectors on and the ends and so forth. You might save yourself a lot of trouble if you just go ahead and put it, if you have all the computers and all that, put your router, when they install it, when you upgrade, put it in your sound room. All right. So next is software. It goes from free to subscription based up here to these, which I've had experience with all three. Let's go through them. Free version. Well, we all like free, don't we? That's OBS, Open Broadcast Software. We like free. People like free, but it's gonna be a learning curve here. I've got one church that I've worked with, a young man there who has dedicated himself to learn OBS. It's not very difficult to learn, but there is a learning curve because it is free, and there is a plug-in where you can stream to 2 locations with the free plug-in from OBS for free. Now, it's not going to be as convenient as the paid-for services. You're going to have to go and do some things manually, but again, we get what we pay for. So OBS, I highly recommend it. We stream at our church. We stream OBS through Restream. And we used to go through StreamYard. I recommend to all my clients and churches for user-friendly ease, go with StreamYard. In fact, see the description below, and you'll see a coupon there to get, I believe, $10 off StreamYard. If you use my link, I appreciate it. So StreamYard, it's just easy. Most people like that. They say, I just want easy. I don't have to learn anything. That's the way to go. Go StreamYard route. It's user-friendly. It's just simple. It's easy. I've taught people that don't have much computer skills how to use StreamYard in a short amount of time, and it just works. It works great. Restream is what we use now. And the reason we do that is because we get the code. I wanted more granular control over the audio, as we'll talk about here in a minute. And I've also used Caster. Again, you look at all these, they got their pros and their cons, but that's something we can talk about. Lastly, the most important, I believe, in a live stream is what? The audio. Because if you can't hear it, what good is it? You can have good video and no audio, and people are going to fuss at you, but you got to make sure you got good audio. What's one of the major problems that my clients tell me the problems that they're having is low volume on the live stream. If you're interested in that, I'll make a video about that later. You got to determine, first of all, do you have an analog system or a digital sound mixer? Those are going to determine how we approach and get the audio from the room and from the mixer to the computer. So if you have an analog system, if you're not sure, digital will be more computerized. Analog, actual physical buttons and so forth, which digital has that as well in some consoles. On the analog, you're going to need and we can do that two ways to get it to the computer. You can run it from your main out, but the thing is that is not going to give you a good, what we call a mix, which we don't hear a lot about in churches. I'm going to try to train more about that, building a mix. So I've had them come out of the mains. I mean, you can do that, but I'd rather for you to come out of the aux, which most time aux 1, aux 2, aux 3 through aux 6, most of the time, where you got one going, probably to your nursery and one to a foyer or something like that. Then maybe we could take aux 3, if it's open, and put your live stream on it, and you'll have granular control over the piano, over each instrument and vocalist and the pastor's mic and lapel and so forth like that by coming off the aux. And that way, if it gets, if you're on the mains and you're moving the main slider, fader, and affecting the main mix, everything goes down. So that's the downfall of that. On another side, it's, I guess, a little easier. You will need an audio interface in order to get the analog to digital converted over, unless you go with like a Mackie board that I'll put a link below as well for that. A Mackie board has a USB already dedicated as going out, so it has a built-in audio interface. You can get those $500, $800. I know I'm getting ready to do an install where a church paid about $800, and it will already have the USB to go to the computer, so you could skip the audio interface. You wouldn't need it. Save yourself $100, put the $100 in the mixer. See. Next is digital. If you have a digital board, it can be a little easier because it always has, like the Behringer X32, which we use, it already has a dedicated audio interface. Now, that's a lot to take in, so that's the reason, if you see the description below, everybody's in a different situation. I understand that. If you like to get with me on one-on-one and do some consulting for you, see the description below this video, and I'll be happy to meet with you and talk about your particular individual situation. All right, trust this helps.